I don't even know what episode we're on. Hey everybody, this is Brian, and this is episode 5 of the Divorce Survival Guide, and this is called Separation, or more appropriately, Marital Separation. This is going to be another painful one. I mean, I don't think there is an easy one in this entire series, but this one is particularly painful because when you separate from your spouse, statistically, you're going to get a divorce. I think it was like, I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was like 89% of all separations end in a divorce. So the odds are not in your favor on this one, unfortunately. But some states, it's actually a requirement to separate before you can get a divorce. Now, what does that mean exactly? Some states have a legal requirement to do this, and some states do not. So, for example, I'm here in Michigan. You can divorce your spouse while they're sitting right next to you in the living room. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but you could. Separation is really a period of self-discovery. It's you sitting back, looking at your life, saying, do I even want to be married to this individual? And it is both helpful and hurtful at the same time. And let me kind of elaborate there. Even if you're the one who decided, I don't want this anymore, and you want to separate, you are going to hit this massive emotional wall. Every part of your being is going to feel like it's being ripped apart. One day you're going to feel like really great in this emotional high, and the next day you're going to be barely able to function. Now, unfortunately, as human beings, we tend to kind of mute those very, wide end of the spectrums down to a tolerable amount of emotions. And when you do that, you can't really experience anything other than that numbness that you're feeling. And I know some of you out there know exactly what I'm talking about. You have to feel those emotional highs and those emotional lows. You have to feel those ranges, but at a healthy level. And we'll talk about a couple techniques at the end of the video that I use to really help me through. First and foremost, what is separation? It is you and your spouse separating. That's why it's called separation. But it is more importantly living in two different locations. This is not your spouse moving to a spare bedroom or moving down to the couch or the basement. This is two separate physical locations. Now, there are different types of separation as well. So there's a temporary separation, there is a permanent separation, and there is a legal separation. Now, let's talk about those three. A temporary separation, this is when, your spouse moves in with a friend or, a relative or something like that. And they're like, you know what? I'm going to go stay at mom's house for a while until we figure this out. That's a temporary separation. Temporary separations are really meant to be short term. I know I said at the beginning of this that, the vast majority of separations end in divorce. Well, guess what? People that separate temporarily tend to continue to separate temporarily over and over again until they do a permanent separation. Once you have one separation, it's really hard to come back from that unless you have good, solid communication in the relationship and you're willing to both work on things. The second one is a permanent separation. Now, permanent separation means, well, you're permanently separated, but you're also married. And this is where it gets confusing. You can actually live separately and still stay married. Now, doing that, you still have all the hardships of marriage. You still have, joint accounts, joint bills, joint taxes, things like that, but you live two separate lives. A lot of times, people that have religious reasons will permanently separate, or if there is just some geographical challenge. So, for example, if you're a worker from a foreign country, your spouse may actually live in a foreign country while you're here working. That is actually considered a permanent separation because you two are permanently separated. Now, I don't like the word permanent in this because people can sometimes do come back together, which then, of course, makes it a temporary separation. But remember, people that temporarily separate tend to separate over and over and over again until they get a divorce. Then there is the third one, which is legal separation. Now, legal separation is exactly that. You get a lawyer, you go to a courtroom, and you legally become separated. What that means is you're still married, but you have a little bit of legal protection there. So if your spouse decides to go buy that, extreme sports car and blow the bank account up and stuff like that, you're kind of insulated from that in most states, not all. So you have to be very careful and go get a lawyer. Go get a lawyer. I mean it. This is not something you want to mess around with. You need a lawyer if you're going to navigate the court system, especially for a legal separation. Because if you don't, you could still legally be liable for your spouse, even though they're off living their best life. You don't want that, trust me. While you're separated, regardless of which type it is, you're going to want to follow a certain set of rules that you both agree upon. You have to understand, you're still married. So even though you're separated, don't go out and party and live your best life unless you expect they're going to do the same thing. Some rules that you should really have up front is contact. How often are you going to contact each other? And how are you going to do it? Is it going to be via email or text or phone, face to face? And why? Why would you contact them? Are you going to contact them every Friday and have dinner and just kind of catch up for the week, see them weekly? Or if you have kids, for example, you're going to have to contact them because you have kids. And kids being kids are going to have questions. And now the kids are going to say, well, how come I have to stay at mom's? Or how come I have to stay at dad's? Or why don't mom and dad live together anymore? And those conversations suck. I'm just going to tell you, they suck so hard, but you're going to have those conversations. Especially if kids are involved, you're going to have to really sit down and navigate this up front with your spouse and have a solid set of rules that you're both going to follow and no deviating from those rules whatsoever. Another thing to consider is shared bills and joint accounts. If you're still legally married, you still have those shared bills and those joint accounts. And you don't want to start, wondering why the joint account suddenly has no money in it, or you have one vehicle between the two of you, but you both need that vehicle. I mean, how are you going to navigate that? Unfortunately, you're going to need to sit down and have those painful conversations up front. And things don't always go the way you think they will. People will tell you anything they can in the moment, and then afterwards, when they're free and they're in their own apartment or their own home, they're going to do whatever they want to do. I'm sorry, it's just a hard reality of life. And yes, dating. We should talk about dating. This is just it's such a tricky subject to tackle when you're legally separated. And not even legally separated, when you're just separated in period. You have to make sure that you both understand up front what the rules are in dating, because what typically happens is you will separate, and it doesn't matter if it's temporary, permanent, or legal, you'll separate, and one of you know who you are, will go off and meet someone new. But you're still married. So what are you doing? You're actually cheating on your spouse at this point. And depending on the state you're in, that could actually be a crime, or it could be something that's going to really just destroy you in court. And there are judges out there that will throw the entire book at you just because you are cheating on your spouse. So you want to make sure that if you're going to date while you're separated, that your spouse is okay with that and that they are going to date as well and that you're okay with them dating. Because guess what? If you're off on a dating site living your best life, you better believe your spouse is going to be doing the same damn thing. And when you start crying, well, I'm the victim here, guess what? You were doing it too. So you have to be very, very careful. Now, whatever rules you decide on when you separate, you have to make sure that you both follow them. And this is going to take a huge leap of faith for both of you, because guess what? You're not living together anymore. You have no way of verifying what they're actually doing. And you're going to hear a lot of rumors about them. You'll hear rumors like, oh, I saw your husband at the bar with some chick. The reality is he just went to a bar, have a beer, and then the lady next to him said hi. Or I saw your wife on a date with some guy. Well, the reality it was the waiter bringing food or something, and she was dining alone. You don't know. My major point is, do not jump to conclusions. Communicate with your spouse. Talk to them. That should be one of the reasons why you communicate is, hey, I heard you did this. Is it true? Or, hey, I'm going to go do this. Are you okay with it? I hate to beat a dead horse, but communication really is key here. If you don't have good communication, you're doomed. It's just not going to work. You're going to have a really painful time in separation. The biggest problem with separation is going to be emotions. You have to understand that separation is a journey of self-discovery. And while you're going off on this journey, discovering yourself, so is your spouse. They're off discovering themselves. And they may be doing things that you're not comfortable with, or you may be doing things that you're not comfortable with, or that you know that they wouldn't be comfortable with. So your emotions are going to be all over the chart. Imagine this scenario. You and your spouse separate. You're bored, you're lonely, you're like, hey, I'm going to go get something to eat. You go down to a local restaurant, and you see your spouse sitting there at the bar talking to someone you've never met before. And you two have an agreement that you're not going to date. where's your mind immediately going to go? You're going to think they're dating. You're going to think they're on a date. You may get mad. You may get upset. You may cry. I mean, your emotions are just going to be everywhere. You want to make sure that you start doing some inner work. And by inner work, I mean really get in touch with your emotions. We as human beings tend to mute our emotions. We don't like emotional extremes. We like things like this. You want to make sure that you can handle those emotional extremes in a healthy fashion. The problem comes in when we feel emotions. Most of us feel them so extremely we don't know how to handle them. And one of two things happens. Either we completely shut down and become numb, which is not healthy because now you can't experience the healthy emotions, or you feel those emotions so painfully raw that you just cease to function. And when you do that, that's when you find somebody crying their eyes out and they can't get out of bed for 3 days. Neither of those is healthy. You need a healthy way of experiencing emotions. So some tips that I've learned is that most emotions last about 8 hours at the most. I don't care how horrible your emotion is, it's going to last about 8 hours. There are some exemptions to this rule, like a family member dying. You're going to feel that for a long time. But typically you'll see your emotions kind of do this, where it will go up and down and up and down. You have these peaks and valleys of emotional spikes. And the goal here is to kind of smooth them out. So instead of these jagged up and downs, you get a nice smooth emotional reaction. You have to understand what's going on with your nervous system. Emotions and the body are very closely linked. You will actually feel emotions. I don't know if you're even aware of this, but you will feel your emotions in your body. So for example, and this may be slightly different for you, but when I'm very sad, I feel it like right here in my chest. Like they call it a heartbreak for a reason, because you feel it in your chest. And when I'm angry, I feel it kind of like down in my stomach. I get like this big knot in my stomach where I get really angry and really tight and tense. A great example is today. I had just like a horrible day at work. And then my ex-wife reached out and wanted to chat with me. And I'm like, oh God, I don't want to talk to her. But curiosity killed the cat. I wanted to know what she wanted. And so like the back of my neck is just completely tense and tight. And I'm just this big wad of stress and I have a headache because of it. How do you deal with all that? Well, there's a simple trick I want to teach you. So you hold your hands out in front of you, like look at the palms of your hands, just look at them. And I want you to look at one hand, and as you look at that hand, focus on it, like feel your fingertips, feel the skin between your fingers, feel the palm of your hand, like actually feel it with your eyes. Just examine your hand, and what you'll notice is you'll feel the hand you're looking at way more than you'll feel the hand you're not looking at. Shift your gaze to your other hand here, and you'll actually feel the sensation of leaving one hand to the other. This sounds like science fiction, guys, but I swear this works. And as you do that, you'll notice you're feeling the hand you're observing. And what you're not observing, you feel a lot less. Now you can take that and do it through your whole body. So when you're really sad and you're feeling it in your chest, feel it in your chest. Feel what it's like. Feel the tightness in your chest. Feel how your breath is very shallow. Now force yourself to breathe deeper. Breathe down into the stomach. Take deep breaths. And what you're doing is you're changing your breathing rhythm. And this is really key. They teach this in like yoga, for example. This is really key to controlling, I think it's called your vagus nervous system. This controls your fight, flight, or freeze response. And this is what you're going to be experiencing when you hit these emotions. You're immediately going to either fight it, you're going to try and run away from it, or you're going to completely freeze up. And you'll notice that if you've ever gone through a breakup, you've experienced this. You're out in public, you see your ex, and then like, boom, you're just completely frozen, or you're very angry, or you want to run away. Deep breath. Take deep breaths all the way into your stomach. Fill it up as much as you can. And as cliche as it sounds, 10 deep breaths will just like cure you of almost all your emotions. You have to understand why you're having the emotion. Emotions and logic do not mix, but there's a logical reason why you're having the emotion. For example, let's go back to the scenario of seeing your significant other at a bar with someone else. You get angry. Well, why are you angry? Because you had an agreement that you wouldn't date, something like that. But you're also really getting angry because of something else. Anger is a mask over other emotions. You're not really angry, you're sad, you're heartbroken because you're seeing someone you care about with someone else. The point I'm driving here is that your emotion that you're experiencing may not actually be the emotion you're feeling. So I would, for example, see my ex driving in traffic, and I would instantly get like this ball in my stomach because I was angry, but then that ball would move up into my chest. And I'm not really angry, I'm sad, I'm heartbroken because even though I'm the one that filed for divorce, I missed my wife. I was in love once. And I'm sure you're in love too. That's why you got married. So understand where your emotions are coming from and why. Be very conscious of how you feel physically when you have emotions. How do you feel when you're angry? How do you feel when you're crying? How do you feel when you're nervous? And take some deep breaths, because what you're doing when you're pulling all that oxygen into your body is you're telling your nervous system, look, I'm okay. The whole vagus nervous system, fight, flight, or freeze, is designed to be a survival mechanism. It's designed to help you if you're being chased by like a bear or a tiger or something. But you're not being chased by a bear or a tiger. You're simply experiencing unpleasant emotions. And so you have to learn to tell your body, you're okay. Everything's fine. And if you need another helpful tip, this is what I've learned. This is called an anchor. Look at your hands and the space between your thumb and your finger. I don't know what this little space here is called. But when you're in a good mood, like watch some funny YouTube videos, listen to some fun music, something that makes you happy, slightly pinch that skin right here. Let's see if I can do it. Pinch that skin. And just do that a few times. Look at pictures of, puppy dogs or kittens, or watch funny videos, or watch a comedy and just kind of pinch your hand. And then when you feel those emotions, like if you see your spouse or you're in traffic or at a bar or wherever, and you get those really gut-wrenching emotions, pinch yourself. You'll feel that anchor, and you almost immediately go back into that mental state of when you were happy, because now you're training your body to feel something else. Now, I don't want to advocate pushing your feelings down. You're going to have to process these at some point. And I would highly encourage you to seek therapy. Get a trained medical professional to talk to you about these things and help you navigate your emotions and why you're having these emotions. And if you can't afford therapy, or you just don't want to go, find a friend, find someone you can trust, find someone you can talk to. And as dumb as it sounds, if you don't feel comfortable talking to somebody, write down in a journal. That helped me immensely, was just writing in a journal. I was very angry today because, she said this, or I was very sad today because I had this thought. And when you go back and reread that journal, you'll find that a lot of your emotions really weren't grounded in logic. For example, I was sad one day because something happened. And when I went back and read the log, the thing that I thought I was sad about never actually happened. I was just sad. And it took all that time to understand the link between a physical feeling and your actual emotions. I'm not going to lie to you. This is going to be tough. It's going to be challenging. And it's going to be a lot of work. It's not something you're going to get over in a day. And you're going to slip up. You're only human. You're going to have good days and bad days. But you know what? You'll get through them. One thing to really bear in mind, though, is that separation is a time of self-discovery, and change and healing is usually painful, but you come out the other side of that way better than you were when you started. You have to understand that in order for you to change, you're going to have to change, or you're going to be stuck in the same miserable spot you've been the rest of your life, and you don't want that. So take time, be kind to yourself, be kind to your spouse, really take time for yourself. Learn what you as an individual need to be happy. Are you happy being with friends? Are you happy reading books? Are you happy being alone? Are you happy doing sports, fishing, playing pool, walking in nature? What makes you happy? Now is the time to go do those things. Because when you feel those really hard emotions and you're right in the middle of that 8-hour cycle where your emotions are all over the chart, you're going to want to be able to go do something that makes you happy. For me, that's walking. I love walking in nature. So when I would get really tense and tight and I would just have one of those emotions, I would just go, you know what? I'm going to go for a walk. And I would go for a nature walk, and I'd look at the birds and the squirrels and all those fun things, and I realized it really wasn't that big of a deal after all. Kind of Get out there, see things, see the world, see beautiful things, find things that make you happy. Do things, meet new people. But above all, find your true self. Figure out what you need in life. And when your spouse wants to talk, do yourself a favor. Listen to them. I hope you guys found this helpful. I love you guys.
Thank you.